Good morning, Twitch.tv. Good morning to YouTube as well. It's been a while since I put my microphone in entirely the wrong place to start the stream, so that's fun. And of course, good morning. Come on, there you go. Good morning, Mini Motorways. All right, let's go to Moscow for today's daily challenge. Let's see here. Spaghetti Junction, we start with 5 motorways and no further motorways are offered. And then high-density buildings can appear directly adjacent to destinations. Okay. So we're going to be putting a lot of buildings in place, apparently. Good morning, MV. No, it is not Good Morning Metro. One day we will play Mini Metro again. Now, there are achievements in Budapest that I don't have, because Budapest is a level now. We'll get back to Mini Metro at some point. So I don't always have a topic of conversation that I want to bring up here on the show. Let's do this there we go. I don't always have a topic of conversation. I sometimes just kind of start going and kind of ramble. But today I actually have something I want to talk about. Yesterday, AEW announced that they were forming a partnership with the Owen Hart Foundation, which is going to include merchandise and an annual tournament for an Owen Hart Memorial Tournament for an Owen Hart Cup, and Owen Hart is going to appear in the AEW video game whenever that exists. Let's take a roundabout and also complain about how shitty this placement is. This placement right here, kinda shitty. Let's do that. Hopefully this isn't a nightmare. Yeah, as long as, again, the thing with intersections in Mini Motorways, and don't tell Dinosaur Polo Club this because I don't think it's intended and I'll think they'll patch it, but if you have an intersection where one of the points coming out of the intersection is the exact entry and exit point of a building or a destination here, if you have an intersection in that situation, you can make that intersection as crazy and wild as you like. Cars are not going to slow down when they go into that intersection, even though they really probably should. They're just not gonna. So, these cars will only slow down if they're in danger of running into another car, even though, this is a 4-way intersection and any sane driver would totally just slow down here. Doesn't matter. These yellows are actually pretty well positioned. It's fun. I already have a bridge, so give me 2 traffic lights. I might want to reposition. Actually, I could probably do a traffic light right here. Yeah, I think I'll do a traffic light right here just to give these yellows the chance to go up and rescue this guy if they need to. For the most part, this traffic light is just going to stay green and nobody's going to come here. But even if someone has to go up there, it's going to be turn left with the light and then right against it. So this is basically the perfect spot for a traffic light, is what I'm saying. Now, you out over here, why don't you take that? Now we have to do something with this guy. Should I motorway this? Actually, yeah, I think I should. It seems a little silly to draw a motorway for just one house, but the alternatives are, get this white guy out onto here somehow with a bridge and a traffic light, and it would be a whole procedure. So let's not do that. Instead, give me another bridge. Let's run you directly into there. And you now. I will talk about Owen Hart in a minute, I swear. You come out here. You go there. And now you 2 guys need to go just like that into that business. Perfect. Okay. So yesterday, AEW announced that they're partnering with the Owen Hart Foundation for an Owen Hart Memorial Tournament, and Owen's going to be in the AEW video game, and oh my god. Okay. Okay. This is all fine. You know what? We're going to reposition this. You're going to come up here. And yeah, we're going to do that. And now, you two will... Why don't you come out here? Doot, 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 and doot. And we'll do traffic light right there. I think that's okay. That's not a perfect traffic light, but it's going to be fine. Okay. So AEW is partnering with the Owen Hart Foundation again. I need to for people who don't really like. I have a lot of folks who watch the channel who aren't necessarily the biggest wrestling fans in the world. So I suppose it's worth just going over some basic and for the wrestling fans this is going to be basic, but just an introduction to who is Owen Hart and why does this matter. Good God. This game, this daily challenge is already proving to be very frustrating. Okay, I swear that we're gonna do this at some point. I only have one bridge, so I can't. Actually, shit, I only have one bridge. Well, I have two motorways, so. That being the case, why don't you two get a motorway up to there, and you come out here, take this bridge, go in there. All right. So again, a lot of folks don't know necessarily a whole lot about wrestling on the channel, just some basic introductions. Owen Hart was a wrestler. He was part of the legendary Hart wrestling family, and the Harts are basically like wrestling royalty. Their legacy goes back to, it goes back, I don't know, centuries in the wrestling business, but a very, very, very long time. And they've had, a bunch of wrestling, big names in wrestling are part of the Hart family, including Bret Hart, who was a WWF champion for a long time and a number of years, and Stu Hart, who's one of the most influential trainers and bookers, and just one of the most important personalities in wrestling history is Stu Hart. Let's kill this number 2 motorway and then come up here, and I'm actually going to use the bridge that I just got to connect these greens into there, and we're going to do that. So now the greens can go into this guy or up over to here. Doing that will free up these blue guys right here to potentially, why don't you come here, and then you have a choice if you want to take this motorway and go over here. There. That's a very long road for those yellows to get into that network, but it works. So, Bret Hart's a very famous wrestler from the 80s and 90s, and Stu Hart, and, they had a number of Harts, just very famous wrestlers, very famous all-time wrestling family. And Owen Hart was Bret's younger brother. I think he was Stu's youngest son. Stu had a number of sons who became wrestlers. I think Owen was the youngest of them. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's the case. And, the most famous thing about Owen Hart, unfortunately, is the way he died. Owen Hart was a wrestler, obviously, and he was wrestling for the WWF, now known as WWE, of course. And there was a pay-per-view event in Kansas City, in 1999, and Owen died. He was supposed to do a rappelling entrance from the ceiling of the building, and there was an accident, and his clip came unbuckled, and he fell a great distance into the ring, and he died. And it was awful, and it was tragic, and it sucks to talk about, and it's no fun to think about, but it was a horrible, tragic accident. And yeah, that's Owen Hart, unfortunately. What am I doing here? What am I thinking? I'm thinking that we should move these guys over to here, do that, and then have another motorway go up here, just to provide extra support over there. So now these white buildings have a choice of which way to go to support. And that should be fine. These blue guys don't have anything to do right now, but they don't really need to do anything. So I think it's fine. These purple guys will come over here. Okay. So Owen Hart passes away. He dies in an accident at a pay-per-view. And for a long time, especially if you only watch, WWE, and if you only get your wrestling news through them, and, the day after it happened, they did a tribute show on Monday Night Raw. And over the years, like a few months later, Brett, who was in WCW at the time, did a match with, unfortunately, Chris Benoit, which was a tribute to Owen. But for the most part, Owen has just kind of faded into the history books. People who remember it happening or remember Owen talk about how great a guy he was and how, terribly tragic the accident was. But there hasn't been, like, what am I trying to say? Like, for instance, Owen Hart isn't in the WWE Hall of Fame, which really became a thing in, 2004. They started paying serious attention to it again. And for folks who don't pay a ton of attention to wrestling, that's a bit of a surprise. It's like, this guy, yes, there was a tragic accident, but it was an accident, and he was a very great wrestler, and he was beloved by not just, the locker room, but really everybody in the WWE really loved Owen Hart. So why haven't they honored his legacy and put him in the Hall of Fame, is the question that someone might ask. And that is a totally fair question. However, basically, since the accident, Owen's widow, Dr. Martha Hart, has wanted absolutely nothing to do with WWE. And if you listen to WWE, and when I say absolutely nothing to do with WWE, I mean Owen Hart was in a video game that came out just a few months after he passed away, mostly because they had already done all of the work of putting him in the game, and all they needed to do was add a memorial graphic and say, this is, the game came out in the fall of 1999, and Owen died in May of that year. So the game was already made, and he was just in that game. But since then, Owen is not in the WWE Hall of Fame. There has not been, he hasn't appeared in any other video games. There hasn't been any real major tributes to him on WWE programming, even though, again, he was a fantastic wrestler and everybody loved him, and he passed away in a terrible, tragic accident. And if you listen to WWE's side of the story, which you will come to find out is not a thing you should ever do, but if you listen to WWE's side of the story, it paints Owen's widow, Dr. Martha Hart, as a very bitter woman who can't get over the fact that there was a terrible, tragic accident, but that's all it was. We're going to take this white bridge over to here. And these white businesses will support this one right here. That'll be fine. However, and this has been known for a very long time. Like, the facts here have been established for a while, but it's taken some time for a lot of people to know about it just because, the wrestling business is kind of, I don't want to say secretive, but secretive is probably the word. Let's take a bridge here. Now, actually, you spawning right there is perfectly fine. You can spawn right there all you want, because it'll give these guys something to do. So if you don't pay super close attention, it's very easy to, just hear WWE's side of the story that, there was a terrible accident and Owen Hart passed away, and we all feel very sad. But, in the years since, his widow has become a villain by not allowing WWE to honor Owen's legacy with, putting him in video games, inducting him into the WWE Hall of Fame, that sort of thing. But in truth, there's no two ways about it. Owen Hart died in an accident, but that accident was caused by WWE and Vince McMahon's negligence. There was an episode of a TV show called Dark Side of the Ring, which basically talks about, not necessarily dirty secrets, but yes, dirty secrets of the pro wrestling industry, and one of them was on Owen Hart and his death, and it basically laid out in plain fact, things that had been established for a very long time. But the safety standards that WWE had in place for Owen's stunt were horrendous. They were terribly lacking. There was no reason that any person should have been put in the situation that Owen was in. He was reluctant to even do the stunt. And it went terribly, terribly wrong. And Owen's widow sued WWE and tried very hard to get a day in court before ultimately, realizing that it's never about actually getting a day in court, especially in civil court. And nobody was going to find WWE criminally liable. So there was eventually a settlement. But, in the 2 decades, because this incident happened in 1999, was Owen's death. Let's draw up our last motorway up there, support that big circle. So in the years since Owen's death, there has been, like, a lot of the time when someone sues WWE, they will eventually reconcile just because WWE is functionally a monopoly. That did not happen in the Owen Hart case. Owen's widow has maintained, like, pretty steadfast that, she will never work with WWE. Owen, will not be in the WWE Hall of Fame, that sort of thing. And there are people who will tell you that this is because Martha Hart is, bitter and vindictive and doesn't want to let WWE honor Owen's legacy, when in reality, WWE fucking killed her husband, and she doesn't want them to profit off of his name and likeness after they already fucking killed him. And it's very hard to feel, sympathy for WWE in this situation, unless you've only heard the WWE side of the story, which is, a common theme. This guy up here is not doing terribly well, but I think, I did just hook, actually, I think we can provide a little more support there. Just get a couple more of these blue houses over here. Right, give me another bridge. So all of this is to say, WWE has basically portrayed Martha Hart as a villain for 20 years now, despite the fact that they killed her husband, which is just, it's a very WWE thing to do, but yeah, it stinks. Yesterday, as I finally get to the point I was trying to make when I started this stream. Oof. How am I going to get up here? How am I going to get up there? I basically need to have a motorway. Yesterday, All Elite Wrestling announced that they were partnering with the Owen Hart Foundation to create they were entering into a partnership with the Owen Hart Foundation, which will include Owen Hart merchandise. Owen Hart will be, as I said, in the AEW video game, and they will have an annual tournament named after Owen Hart. All of these things to honor Owen's legacy. And all of this with the full cooperation of Dr. Martha Hart, who is, the person who started the Owen Hart Foundation after Owen died, and has basically been the woman, I don't want to say in charge, but in charge of Owen's legacy. And there was some reaction, after all of this time where she hasn't allowed WWE to do really anything with Owen's name or likeness, why AEW and why now? And in short, the answer is because AEW is good at this. AEW has shown time and again that they actually, they're still a for-profit enterprise and they're still run by a billionaire, even though the guy's only a billionaire because his dad was a billionaire. AEW has done so much good and so many things right in the pro wrestling industry, as my daily challenge falls apart here. But hey, 2,581 commuters. That feels pretty good. Top 500 on the daily challenge. I will take that. All right. That does feel pretty good. All right. I feel like I've done a bad job trying to get my point across here. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to a place and we're just going to go... I'm not going to talk about the game at all. I'm just going to focus on this. So AEW has done a very good job protecting, I don't want to say legacies, but part of it is legacies. They've done a very good job protecting the legacies of their wrestlers. They've done a very good job just being citizens of the community of professional wrestling, if that makes sense. There was a wrestler named Brody Lee who passed away last year, and he was sick for a very long time. And, it was noticeable that he was off television. There were people who were asking around, hey, what's going on with Brody Lee? And pretty much everyone in AEW, after a certain point, knew about it. They knew he was sick. They knew it was looking very bad. And they didn't say anything. They didn't leak anything to the dirt sheets. They didn't, they didn't, spread rumors and say, oh, he's got this, he's got that, he's having this procedure, he's doing this, he's doing that. There was none of that. There was just, he's not here. We'll let you know. And unfortunately, ultimately, he passed away. But, in the time since then, a lot of people who have come to AEW have said that the way they handled that situation played a big part in their decision to come to AEW. Just because they did so right by him and his wife, and they were so impressed with the way AEW handled that situation because it was so unlike the way it had been handled really by anyone else in the industry. And I think a lot of, I would not be surprised if, Dr. Hart saw that and saw that, AEW and their CEO, Tony Khan, really do care, and obviously they really do want to do right, not just by the wrestling business as a money-making enterprise, but by the people in the wrestling business, which is there's no gentle way to say it. It's a lot fucking better than WWE's done. You know? There are people who have only had the WWE narrative for 20 years who are saying that, this is a slap in the face to WWE. And for one, I don't think it is. But for two, WWE's is a face in desperate need of slapping. They have not done anything right by really most of their wrestlers, but especially Owen Hart and Martha Hart. And in this instance, they literally killed Owen Hart. Owen Hart would be alive if it wasn't for WWE, and that's, it feels gross and simplistic to boil it down to that, but if you watch that episode of Dark Side of the Ring, or if you've just, look over the facts of the case, it's impossible to not come to that conclusion. So, there has been some backlash, not a lot. I don't want to act like everybody is doing this, or even every WWE fan is doing this. But there has been some backlash on, Twitter and Facebook, that sort of thing, saying, "Oh, WWE should sue," or "Oh, this is insulting." And it's like, again, I don't think that is the reason. But if that is the reason, that's a perfectly valid and good reason, because, again, there's no justifying the way WWE treated Owen Hart and has treated his family in the years since his death. It's just awful. And to see AEW, obviously, I worry at times that I come off like I am a complete AEW stan. Let's be honest here. I worry that I lose focus on the fact that AEW is a for-profit business and there is money to be made even in something like this. At the same time, so yeah, AEW is going to make money off of this, probably. Even if it's just in good PR. But it's so different from the way wrestling has usually been run. And when I say wrestling, I basically mean WWE. It's so different from the way WWE runs things. It's so much better than the way WWE runs things that it becomes easy to say, yeah, they're going to make a little bit of money, but, maybe they deserve it. And I don't know. I don't know what the financial particulars are. It's entirely possible that they're donating all of the proceeds from the t-shirts and the action figures and that sort of thing to the foundation. And even if they're doing that, they're still standing to make money. MV says, "I'm not really into wrestling, but people aren't really aware of how what they're saying or doing affects others." At a certain level, that's true. It's hard to say WWE doesn't know they're the villain, but it's also hard to say WWE cares that they're the villain. Let's see. I said I wasn't going to talk about the game, and now I'm thinking about the game. Well, let's just send this down here and run these over this way, and that'll be okay. I don't know. I feel like I've kind of lost my train of thought, but I guess what I'm trying to say is people who are upset about the relationship between AEW and the Owen Hart Foundation need to seriously re-examine the facts of that case. And if you can still justify being mad, then I don't know how, basically, because WWE did, not just Owen, but Owen and his family, they did them so dirty, and AEW has done things so well since their inception. It becomes very hard not to say, AEW is just in the right. And again, you look at the way AEW handled the situation surrounding Brody Lee's death, and it's very hard not to come to the conclusion that AEW is just doing things better, and they legitimately want to recognize Owen's talents and his contributions to the industry and honor his legacy in a way that WWE, they've always said that they want to, and I'm sure on a certain level they do, but they are also very much about making money here, and there is no way that they wouldn't make money, and it's perfectly reasonable for Dr. Martha Hart to say, WWE doesn't get to make money off of my husband who they killed. Because that, again, it's just straightforward. WWE did that. So I am entirely sympathetic to AEW and the Hart family in this, and that's the bottom. Using a fucking wrestling catchphrase. But yeah, that's the last thing I'll say about it. WWE is bad. AEW is good. Rah, simplistic narrative building. Yay. Alright, you go over to here. You go out there. I don't know, it gets me really frustrated to see that there are still people who are 100% pro WWE who refuse to even acknowledge AEW's existence, or who shit on the company at every given turn, when just obviously, in this conversation and in most conversations around AEW, I am biased because I like AEW as a product. I think AEW's product is vastly superior to the WWE product. I also just think, looking at the way they conduct themselves and the way they participate, again, as citizens feels, over-aggrandizing, but as people in this community of professional wrestling, WWE, especially since they went national, and especially since they've, achieved the great success that they have, WWE has always conducted themselves as if they are the only game in town. There is no wrestling business outside of WWE. There is no entertainment outside of WWE in WWE's world. Unless they can get a famous celebrity on Raw, in which case it's, oh my god, look, we have a famous celebrity on Raw. AEW has never pretended that there is only AEW. AEW will say that their championship is the most important championship, and they will say that, their company is the best company, but they will very rarely ignore outside events, and they will never pretend like they're the only company in the world. And that's a big difference from WWE. So when I say, AEW is conducting themselves as members of the wrestling community, that's what I mean. AEW acknowledges that other wrestling companies exist. AEW recognizes that, things that happen in wrestling that aren't in AEW still happen and still matter. And one of those is, Owen Hart. Owen Hart had a tremendous legacy in professional wrestling. He was a fantastic wrestler, first of all, but also he was just almost universally beloved in any locker room he was in. You will have to go very hard, and you will have to go very far and try very hard to find someone who has a bad thing to say about Owen Hart. And, I was thinking about it after this announcement was made. AEW has existed as a company for just a few years now. They've only been around really since 2019. Their first show was in 2019. They existed in the pandemic, but that's about it. This is all falling apart, actually. It's bad. I don't like it. Let's put something here to save it. It's probably too late to save it. AEW's been around since 2019. Owen Hart, of course, died in 1999. So, it's easy to say, why is AEW doing anything with this guy? They were like, their first show was 20 years almost to the day after Owen's passing. And it wasn't like, they had Bret Hart on that show, but just in like a celebrity, special guest star kind of role. It's not like, when was the first Double or Nothing? AEW Double or Nothing, their first show was 2 days after the 20-year anniversary of Owen's passing. So, it's not like AEW had this long-standing relationship with him, and there are only a handful of guys in AEW who worked with Owen directly. There's, Mark Henry and Paul White and Jim Ross, who are all announcers for AEW. Chris Jericho probably crossed paths with him at some point before they both became big stars. But, a lot of the older guys in AEW never, even the older guys in AEW never really worked with him. I don't think, Jake Roberts might have crossed paths with him. Actually, yeah, Jake Roberts and Owen were in the WWF at the same time together. But that's, you have to go a long way back. But even still, even with that, Owens... Let's do this. I think that's okay. Owens' legacy, even to people who didn't work with him, is massive. And, Tony Khan, the CEO of AEW, if there's one thing you can say about Tony Khan, the man is a major wrestling fan, obviously. And that's an obscene understatement to say, oh, Tony Khan's a major wrestling fan. He saw basically everything Owen ever did because he's seen basically all the wrestling there's ever been. So to suggest that it's just again, I'm basically like, there are people who are shitting on this, saying that it's disrespectful, or saying that the Hart family or AEW are being disrespectful, and those people are just dummies. They're just jerks. That's all there is to say. All right, you guys go into here. I don't know. I feel like I'm repeating myself now. I'm making the same points over and over again, but it's just frustrating. How are you going to get down to here? I think we're going to have to do a couple traffic lights. Do one here, do one there. So yeah, AEW is partnering with the Owen Hart Foundation. I think it's a good thing. I will be interested to see, the Owen Cup every year, see what they do with that. It should be good. I trust that AEW is going to do the right thing. Or at the very least, they're going to try. AEW is not always a perfect company. They don't always get things right, especially on the first try. There have been times when their booking was kind of bad. There have been times when their matches were kind of bad. There have been times when they came off as tone deaf to important, political or personal or just to important issues. AEW is not perfect, and even though I've sung their praises for basically this entire stream/video, I don't want to forget that, and you shouldn't forget that. But they're trying. They're trying to do the right thing, and when they screw up, they acknowledge that they screwed up, and they try to do better. Whether it's a poorly booked Dynamite that ends with a stupid angle. They acknowledge that they screwed up, they try to do better, and the next Dynamite comes out, starts with a hot match, and it's a fantastic show. Or if they have, if somebody says something on their TV that they probably shouldn't say, whether it's, a negative term or an insult that comes off wrong or anything like that, AEW will acknowledge that something was bad and then try to fix it. They've done that before. They'll do it again. I don't have another traffic light. I should have stuck a roundabout somewhere. I can't stick a roundabout anywhere. You know what? Let's take this back. We'll have a tunnel instead, and it'll come right out of here. And it's going to be very interesting, continuing on the Dark Side of the Ring theme, as I'm just vamping to fill out the rest of this level here. It's going to be interesting to see what AEW does with Ric Flair, on a totally different note. There was an episode of Dark Side this past week. The most recent episode of Dark Side of the Ring paints Ric Flair in a very terrible light because of some things that Ric Flair did on a plane ride, not quite 20 years ago now. But it's not a good look for Ric, basically. And I suspect AEW, whether it's just, knowing that he's toxic right now, or just knowing that it's not the right thing to do, they're not going to bring in Ric Flair anytime soon. I believe. I hope. I could be wrong. You could always be wrong, and people can always let you down. But there's a level of trust that if they do something wrong, they're going to try to make it right. And that hasn't been there with WWE for a very, very, very long time. You come out. Why don't you just turn around and do that? We're just going to kind of let this level peter out, I think. I don't know. I've said all I have to say. I didn't really organize my thoughts, as you can tell, but I'm in favor of AEW doing things to honor Owen Hart's legacy, because Owen was a fantastic wrestler who was done dirty by, I say the wrestling business, but it's really by Vince McMahon and WWE. And he and his widow, obviously he was literally killed by it, and his widow has been put through an emotional ringer from it by WWE and by their fans for so long. I just hope the best. I wish for the best for them and their family. And again, WWE is bad. Don't support them if you can. That is the moral of the story. WWE is bad. AEW is good. Everything is simple and black and white. Not everything is simple and black and white, but if you can assume that WWE is bad, you're probably correct. Yeah, that's it. I don't know. I think we're just going to wrap it up here rather than let this level play out, because I've been talking for a very long time and I'm spinning in circles. So that's going to do it for today's episode of Good Morning Mini Motorways. Thank you all, everybody, so much for watching. Everything is gray, says MV. That's right. Everything is gray. Shades of gray, as a particularly dumbass wrestling booker once said. All right. Thank you again, everybody, for watching. Later today, for the folks on YouTube, there will be another episode of Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Trials and Tribulations. For the people on Twitch, we will also be streaming that later tonight. We're going to start the 5th and final case of Trials and Tribulations. Just 2 more cases to go in the Phoenix Wright trilogy, so that's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you all so much for watching again. If there's anything you want me to talk about, I will try to do a better job of it. I don't know. I just want to kind of get my thoughts out there and get them organized. That's what the morning is for, getting your thoughts in place, right? Hopefully, right? All right. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a good day. Bye-bye.